that was one of the things.
You want to come here?
I'd heard it. We had a board here, about the layout of the graveyard. Oh, yes. There was yeah, the viewer. Oh, yeah, this is this is the pen. Yeah. We just. We don't have enough battery. Oh, you got that energy.
I'll go on the other side.
This afternoon. So we're ready we're going to have Eric talk a little bit about some of the old headstones here in Drumcliff, and then Congella's going to talk a little bit about some of the things we talked about this morning and the biodiversity as we go down. And then when we get down, John is going to talk about the new section in Drumcliff and about how the project, well, not how it evolved, but how we went through it and just the organisation and the mapping of it. So that's really what we're here about now. So Eric's going to begin and describe a few things here.
Okay, well, I suppose welcome to Drumcliff. It sounds a bit strange for a Clarecastleman to be talking about Ennis, but we'll risk it. Drumcliff, well, I suppose it started in this church building here, which dates to the 10th century, and there's the ruins of a round tower just there beside us. There's evidence of some burials around the church grounds, but it wasn't until the church became a ruin then that burial started in here. And I think the earliest gravestone we found here was 1788. There are a number here, but you have to remember that the main graveyards in Ennis were Goranakilla, which, if you know the market area in Ennis where the public toilet is, it's being developed now as a covered-in market. That was a burial ground there. You had the grounds around Ennis Abbey, the old Ennis Friary, and you had Corvarn, which is over here to the east. They were the main burial grounds, but they were beginning to get, I suppose, filled up. And then in June 1832, there was a massive outbreak of cholera in Ennis and throughout the county. Ennis was badly hit, and they needed a burial place for the people that died from that cholera. So the first people in modern times, if you like, to be buried here were about 350 people who died from cholera. They were buried in a mass grave just up here behind us. No names, nothing on that recorded on them. Clare Roots have since discovered about 30 or 40 names from newspaper reports, but there's no name recorded on that cholera pit. Then there was a mixture between Catholics and Protestants buried here then over the years from 1832. There were a number of burial rolls, but they were incomplete, they were faded, and in very many cases the only name recorded was either the person who purchased the grave or the first person to be buried in that grave. No subsequent names were recorded. So Clare Roots, we were founded 10 years ago, and we quickly realized that there was a huge amount of information from a family history point of view to be got from the gravestones here. And we decided to take on the task of recording the gravestones. Now, I think if we knew the size of the task, we'd quickly have changed our minds, but in our ignorance we went ahead. There is some of the graves down towards the road are in ordered rows, but a lot up here on the hill, they're dotted all over the place. And unfortunately, we did not know about Sean and his drones in 2007, even if drones were available. So the only way to do it was we got a civil engineer to plot every gravestone in the place. So he took a GPS reading of every grave in the place, and he ended up giving us a map. I'll just open it out for you just to show the size of it.
Oh my gosh.
We start off with that. We discovered that there's 1,000 graves here. And then was the question, how were we going to record them? So 10 brave volunteers stepped forward and we took on 100 graves each. And we started with a brief to, say, tackle graves 1 to 100, to photograph the gravestone, record the inscription as far as we could read it, to transcribe that onto a spreadsheet and link it to the photograph, and at some stage down the road the 10 pieces would be put together. So we started work to work off this map and work from it. As I say, there's 1,000 graves, and they're all shapes and sizes. There's 35 large tombs, there's flat recumbent gravestones, there's Celtic crosses, there's upright stones, there's simple stone markers, there's iron crosses to mark some sites. So a huge variety, and some, as Mary Angela was talking about, the rain wearing away the stone and the inscription. A lot of them were very difficult to read, but we learned after a while techniques to read the stone, and we worked through it. Now, we also decided, Fiona de Berclair is here with us, we decided to involve a class of school children in recording some of the graves. So Fiona organised a team of her pupils to come over here and again record the gravestones, and it provided a great background to them, and we were delighted with it, you know. So that was it. We eventually got the 10 pieces together. Fiona, for the want of anything better to do, she wrote the surname on every grave in that 1,000 graves. We ended up with 2,700 names, which is a fantastic record. And then we decided our objective was to make these inscriptions available, and the best way to do that was to donate our research to Clare Library, and they've put our recording up online. It's available now to everybody worldwide, and we get lots of queries arising from it. I can't say that we've recorded all the gravestones here, because obviously we haven't. We could only record what we could read. So we have 2,700 recorded, but I spoke about the 350 cholera victims that are buried up there. During the famine, there is also a mass grave, and they reckon there's 2,000 people buried in there. And there's also a very large pauper's grave, again with very little record of who's buried in there. They were buried here from the asylum, from the workhouse, from various other places, and they ended up there, which is a rather sad place. We got a monument erected over the pauper's grave there some years ago, and we also put up a nice monument to the 2,000 famine victims. There's no marker over their grave, so we put a record of it, and it's just up here behind us. No, not that we know of. It's a relatively modern graveyard in 1832. It's not old, you know. We also decided to put our researches in written form. So we have the 2,700 names listed on a spreadsheet. We have the map as a central page in that, and then we also told the story of some of the graves, the people that are buried here. We also, which Congela likes, we covered flora and fauna here of the graveyard. We got a man who was an expert on the ironwork of the graveyard. There's some beautiful ironwork from the gates to grave markers to railings around the graves. We got a paper done on that, and we got Hilary Gilmore. She's a local artist here in Clarecastle, to illustrate some of the fine gravestones, I think, which Christy will like. There's some beautiful record here, so we have that in there. So we built a story then around some of the vaults, the history of the graveyard. We took the cholera outbreak of 1832. There's a number of burials here during the troubled times. There's people buried from the First World War, the Second World War. There's there's all variety thing. The ship I'm trying to think is Lusitania. There's a number of people from that. There's Stephen Meany, who was a famous Fenian. I think the biggest funeral ever recorded was to his burial here in the graveyard. So that was Drumcliff as far as we could do it. It's not complete. I'm sure there are still gravestones under scraw there that we haven't yet found, but it's easier to add to a good base rather than have nothing at all. And as I say, that's all widely available now through the good offices of Clare Library. I think that's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Actually, Christie's talk this morning went through a lot of detail and what to look out for on stones and inscriptions.
You said you found techniques as you
Well, techniques, I suppose, sometimes if the stone is wet and sometimes the sun is shining across it, you can read it at times. You'd see people rubbing it with various grass and all sorts of things, but actually we found flour was the simplest thing. On a dry stone, just dust it over lightly and it brings the lettering up like magic. But remember please to brush it off because it turns into an awful muck.
Yeah, we found talcum powder the easiest. It
Yeah.
blew off and there was nothing in the talcum powder that could damage the stone, whereas the flour would kind of, it would get anyway a bit wet, it all would go to glue and doughy.
Yeah, well
Whereas the
that
talcum,
happened too with us.
yeah.
But there's times, I know there's a graveyard that I look out at Clare Abbey and I often visit it, and at different times of the day or the year you'd sometimes see a name that you hadn't noticed before or a design, just the light,
The light and the shadow.
You had that technique where
Yeah, well, a wonderful new technique has just been born, if you like. It's this photogrammetry, and I've had the privilege of spending the last 5 or 6 Saturdays in Roscommon. Your colleague in Roscommon, Nullig Feeney. Nullig put a training course in place in Roscommon where those of us even across the River Suck stole into the county and we learned how to use photogrammetry. Now I can use the camera and I can use the computer, but I'm not a technical person when it comes to packages and that on computers. But this is so basic that I could make a model of that when I go home this evening if I take enough photographs of it, and it'll come out absolutely perfect. It'll see through everything that's there. If it's there, even the minutest, it'll just come out, and you can adjust the light on it, so you can bring out stuff that you can't normally see. The only thing is, you wouldn't graveyard like this where you have over 1,000 memorials. You couldn't. Well, you'd never get finished.
John Tierney now in Corley, he recommends laser light, which is brilliant.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. You just shine it sideways and it brings up stuff that you've never seen before.
And there's a lamp.
It's a laser.
Yeah, it's just a LED.
It's a
these
special.
LEDs.
It's a special one, like.
But if you knew, we'll say that, like, maybe you want this one here or...
Oh yeah, but then I think the photogrammetry is a wonderful way to go.
Like in Killowen Abbey, there are 2 or 3 slabs on the ground. They look like medieval.
Yeah, well,
stones.
that's the sort of
they
stuff.
look smooth, but I'm convinced there's something written on them.
That's bound to be.
So something like that would bring
That bring it up. It's amazing now just how there's going to be stuff that you're not going to get anyway.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the whole thing. Communities get upset and say we can't read the last few letters. What do we do?
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
There's a stage when you have to give up, move on to the next one, and come back. And then, as you say, you might just get a change in light. It might rain.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody hold a mirror and just cast a bit of light in with a mirror. It's amazing what you can do just to assist.
Yeah.
But that's as well part of this, it was to try and get people interested in it, to just give you techniques, and you can hire, like Kilrush got out of historic graves and they came and did theirs. Other people, if it's a small one and if it's handier, that community will get together and like that they'll organise the map and they'll do it. So there's loads of ways you can do it. So if there is a specific one, it is good to try and use what you've learned from today. Let's find out more, but just to try and to do it. But a large number, that there really has been a huge amount done in Clare. We're trying to get those last ones done, and what we try and promote then is that it is included in the Clare Library website, because that means it's available all over the world. So some of the earlier ones don't have photographs, some of the later ones do. So it is evolving and things have changed, and from the time that we started here to what you would do now if you came in with it would be very different in some ways. But I think once you have preserved and transcribed some of them, even if we don't all have public access to them, once they're transcribed and preserved, that is great, you know, because you can't go back and find it if it's gone. So
the other thing that's happened a lot, and it's very hard to control it because headstones at the end of the day are private property. As much as we'd like to say, don't touch it, it's belongs to somebody else. It's sandblasting. Sandblasting is the start of, it's the end of a headstone.
It's like you take the protective skin off it.
Yeah, and people, just to get that across to people, they think it looks great, and it looks great for about a year, and then it starts to disappear.
It gets porous after.
And you know, people, and they realise it, but it's too late. Too late. Right, understand?
The walls here have got the toad flex.
I believe toad flex.
I believe toad flex, correct. And they've got lovely ferns as well. The spleen, yeah, the black spleen work, and the rusty back fern, and you know, so all these are harmless, and they just add to the character of the graveyard. And you'll see there's lots of nooks and crannies for bats. I mean, and for bird nesting, and so that's all appropriate. You know, that's all fine. Found and investigated. It looks to be coming from, doesn't it? Yes, again, look at the ivy. So, I mean, I'm not an expert in this area in terms of how to manage it, but without affecting the roots and building over time. If you hand it, the white horn could be
I'll be back looking, yeah.
Died 3 months ago. Oh, it's so sad and all this, you know.
Yeah, but there now, it's a very good example.
Welcome to the new Drumcliff, as opposed to the old Drumcliff across the road. Now, Clare Root Society have undertaken a few projects here over the years. The first being the documenting of the burials in the old cemetery, which Eric has just explained. Now, that was a difficult project in the sense that it was the burials were very old and a long time span, so that made it very difficult in reading some of the headstones, particularly up in the top. This section here is known as the Calvary section, and this was opened in 1936, and on the 17th of May 1936 to be precise. There are 642 graves in this side compared to Eric's large number on the other side. And in documenting the graves here, we accounted for 1,802 burials. When recording burials for a cemetery, or a section of a cemetery, the first thing to do, as Eric outlined, is to get a map of the area, the map of the cemetery. Now, this is a scaled map in comparison to the large map that Eric had, so it's much smaller, but yet it outlines all the sections in the grave. In this particular area here, the Calvary section, as I said, there are 12 sections. There are 4 across and 3 down, and in each section there are between 50 and 60 graves. Now, in taking on this project, the first thing you would do, of course, as I said, is look at the map and look at the plan and see what the problem is going to be and how much help you would need, and to get as much assistance as you possibly can. We were very fortunate in this case here on this side. There are 12 sections, as I said, so we got 12 volunteers. So that made it easy that we gave us one section to each volunteer, and they were to document all the burials in that grave. The sections, and starting up here at the far corner up here, that was the first one that was opened in 1936. It's Madigan is the name on the headstone up there. When documenting a section, you would document it in alphabetical order. In other words, A, B, C, the three sections coming down, A, B, C, and go back up and start D, and so forth down along. And if you go back up to the first section A, then again you would record all the graves in numerical order, starting left to right from the top left hand corner, coming across 1A, 2A, 3A. So anybody who's taken on a project to document the burials in any particular graveyard, that's the best way to go about it. Like, to get a map first of all, to section it out. If you need help, if you need volunteers, if it's too large, to get the number of people and assign a section to each person. And of course it would be advisable then to give a time scale or time limit. Otherwise it could go on forever. So let's say a month or 2 months or whatever, and give the person the project to do. To document each individual grave, then you would photograph the headstone, note the family name, and as I said, with modern day cameras and digital cameras, you can read. If you can read the inscriptions, it'll make it easy for you for transcribing it later on. If not, if it's faded or aged and you can't read it, well, then you have to put a bit of work into it and do it manually. And as Eric outlined over in the other side, you may have to use even a drop of water on the headstone might bring out the inscriptions, like, you know, or talcum powder someone mentioned, which is also good. It's very easy here in this section as comparison to the others, and some of the other graveyards that I've seen in Kilkishen today, particularly with the drone, when you showed the outline of the graveyard, it was very simple when you see it. But if you were to try and go around to do that without having a map, it would be very difficult, like, you know. But that's what we did here, and as I said, it worked out exceptionally well. And there was, what did I say, 1,800 burials, which was quite a number, 1,802 burials entirely. But when the names of all the burials are inscribed, they're transcribed onto a spreadsheet and attached with the photograph of the particular headstone. There's one thing to remember in recording that. I have a few here. I may not have one for everybody. In relation to documenting the details, if you're documenting a family burial grave, and there might be 3, 4, 5 people buried in it, you'll have to put it all in individual. Just pass out that and you can pass it around there to give you an idea what I'm talking about. Sorry. If you see a name there in the bottom, if you see one name there, Carmody, I think it is, at the bottom. I didn't hold one there for myself for a second. Have a look at that for a second. Sorry. If you see the name Ball, the surname Ball there, now there are what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the one family. They all have to be listed individually, as you can see. But the inscription, when you're taking the details from the headstone, not alone are you taking the person's name and age and the date they died, whatever. You also have to put in loving memory of whatever the inscription's on it. But in all cases, in every case of that family there, individually, you have to put in the full inscription afterwards for when you're transcribing. And the photo, and it's the same photo will appear after each, obviously, like, you know. Sorry. Now, if you find a headstone is difficult to read, as I said, and as Eric said on the other side, if you find one that's worn and you cannot read it, you might need a bit of time to work it. And you could also ask one of the other volunteers, because they're in all probability they will have the same problem. So if 2 or 3 people get together and work on it, you might be able to figure out what the description is. So that's what we did. And like Eric's case across the road, when we finished here, we also produced a booklet which is called Drumcliff, the Calvary section. And again, all the burials are in, and the map of the grave, the section, and all the burials are outlined inside in it. And we selected again a cross section of people who are buried here, and we wrote something of the various people, for people who had made some contribution in some way or other to society, as our people do out in their own way. However, here we have Ernest Dereg. He's buried just up there, that black headstone up there. Brendan O'Regan of Shannon Airport is here, and many others. But there's also a particular grave down there. It's the burial place of the victims of the air crash in 1948, the Pan Am air crash. They're buried just down there on your left as you come in the gateway. So that's more or less this section here. Okay.
It's very useful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, John.
Okay.
For that. Thanks for everybody. It's been such a long day, but it was really, really good now, so I hope you all enjoyed it.